This episode of The Tome Show is brought to you by listeners like you. Thank you to our patrons at patreon.com/The Tome Show. Welcome to The Tome, a D&D news, reviews, and interviews show, and I'm your Tome host, Jeff Greiner.
And I'm Tracy Hurley, and in this episode, number 396, we're going to write a diary about our latest games as we discuss campaign journals. That's right, we're doing a review that isn't the monster manual for the first time in months. Enjoy!
I wrote the script a while ago, and then afterwards I actually looked at the past scripts and realized, no, we haven't done a non-monster manual review. Like, we've done other episodes, but we haven't done a review episode that wasn't the monster manual since November of 2024. So it's nice to take a little break here. So it's been over a year. So we're flying as a duo for this episode. It's just Tracy and me. I didn't put a lot of effort into finding guest panelists for this, but I figured we're working primarily from review copies that we got from the publisher. It is the officially licensed D&D campaign journals. There's a player's journal and a Dungeon Master's guide, and then I'm a Dungeon Master's campaign journal, and then I also have some other comparisons that I've sort of picked up over the last few years that I've kind of been interested in talking about. That was the premise on which I bought them, and this gives me an opportunity to do that. And so I also have the Beetle and Grimm put out a Game Master's journal. Started selling those a few years ago, and then there's a company called Field Notes that makes all kinds of various specialty notebooks and whatever, and they have a character and Game Master journal. So I'll be comparing the officially licensed, just came out journals with those other third party. I guess third party's tricky because the officially licensed one are officially licensed, but they're not actually published by Wizards.
Right.
So, was it, who's the publisher that does all the novels and stuff? Is that Penguin Random House? That has sent us review copies of a bunch of stuff, including these campaign journals, and some other things we might get a chance to talk about. I have the press release here. Penguin Random House.
Yeah, and the back of this says Clarkson Potter Publishers, an imprint of Penguin Random House.
There you go. But yeah, it was Penguin Random House that connected with us and said, hey, we've got these, 5 or 6 things coming out. You want any of them for reviews? And I said, only if you can also send them to Tracy. And they said, great. Which ones do you want? And I said, all of them. And so we got everything so far. I think there's still one more book on that list that we haven't seen yet. So either they're not sending it or it hasn't come out yet. I think it's the crocheting one.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I was wondering about that one.
Yeah, but we got coloring books, we got campaign journals, we got young adult or children's books. Is that the whole list, or am I missing something? I don't know. Guess we'll find out if we ever get around to discussing it and reviewing it. So we have the officially licensed books have come out, and there's 2 different ones. There's the Player's Campaign Journal, and then there's the Game Masters or Dungeon Masters Campaign Journal. I'm trying to remember from the sticker on the back here what the cover price is. $25.
Yeah.
Did you want
US.
Did you want to start? Yeah, that's all right. Thank you. Did you want to start with players or DMs?
We can do the players.
Okay.
That's the one I have on top of my pile.
Sure. And I think it might be worth starting by talking just about the construction, the appearance, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I can draw some comparisons because I don't know that all the other ones that I got have prices printed on the cover. So I may not be able to make that comparison, but off the top of my head without looking them up right now. But yeah, so the official one is clearly, and this is going to be true of both players and DMs, I suppose. They're designed to sort of, they evoke the appearance of like the special covers of the various D&D books that they put out, where it's mostly a black cover with a like 2 or 3 color stylized image of some sort of figure or monster or whatever on it.
Right.
In this case, the players get a roper, and the Dungeon Masters one has a head of Venger from the D&D cartoon.
Right.
They're also they're hefty journals. They are 191 pages. They are hardcover bound, and they have one of those little elastic straps attached coming out of the back cover, so you can wrap it around and use it like a bookmark to mark up a page where you're left off or whatever.
Right.
Any other notes on the appearance and construction of the licensed one?
And I think, well, a couple of quick things. I thought that elastic would be more for keeping the book closed, maybe, rather than marking the spot.
I've always used those and marked a page with them.
Yeah. So it might be for that too. It's got like a decent quality paper to it. There's lots of different sections. One of the things I will point out is that it doesn't really, I don't know how yours is, but it doesn't really lay flat. So I
haven't had an issue with it laying flat. No, mine lies pretty flat.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's just for me at the beginning of the book, the first few sections.
Does it lie flat? You mean when you open it? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, like when you try to open it, like at least right now, because I'm literally handling it.
Yeah.
The first, like, in the players, when we start going through character creation, I do have to fight the book a little bit.
Yeah.
to stay open.
You know, like when you get about halfway, it stays open pretty well.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. When you're not past that halfway point, it is a little bit. You got to handle it with 2 hands, right? You got to hold it open with one hand and right with the other, sort of thing.
Yeah. And then I guess at least the player's one has a back pocket for storing some stuff. So that's something to note too. So it's not expected that only like that you wouldn't use it for holding other stuff. They kind of say to make it yours. But I think we can talk about that more when we talk about the sections and stuff like that. Just some.
Do both of them?
I don't know.
Yeah, both of them have that pocket. So it's place a little, tuck away your little handwritten notes or your handouts or whatever.
So, and then going back to what you're saying, it's it's over 100 and some pages. It's like it's not light. It's not small. It's compact-ish.
It's pretty hefty.
Yeah. So just something to consider. It is, I guess, it is expected to be like for a whole campaign, maybe, but we can talk about that too later.
Yeah.
Construction seems. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, comparing it to, in terms of the size, comparing it to the other ones that I'm comparing it to tonight, it's the biggest. It is both the thickest and the just biggest in terms of size of paper. Like the Field Notes ones are, let's see, the Game Master one is 64 pages. They're both 64 pages. The Beetle and Grimm one is, which also has, by the way, a little pouch in the back, but I can talk about the others in a second, is 200 pages. So this one, the officially licensed one is slightly fewer pages than the Beetle and Grimm one, but it's interesting. Like the listeners can't hear it, but you can see, like the Beetle and Grimm one has more pages, but is physically thinner.
Right.
So they must be using a thicker stock paper in the licensed one.
I think so, and I didn't test it with any sort of pen. Like I do wonder if you want to make it a whole experience, if it would hold up to fountain pens. I didn't test it though, so. But I am wondering if that's what they were going for. It does have
sort of a glossy feel to it as well, though. So I would be interested to see what kind of pins, make sure they don't smear or whatever, because some pins will smear on a glossy finish too.
Right.
So
Yeah, and it's like not as glossy
all I
as.
have in front of me is a ballpoint, so I can't test it.
Yeah, the only thing I have is I have a gel pen, and that one seemed to be, a rolling ball pilot. But it's not quite as glossy as some of the other notebooks I have for other things. So it does feel like it might not smear as much as some others. I think that's about as much as I can really say about it without having taken a bunch of pens to it.
Right. Nope. So the other two products that I have to compare it to are like I said, the Beetle and Grimm's and the Field Notes. I did, while we were chit-chatting, I did look up the price tags on those. And actually they run pretty similar in price. The Beetle and Grimm one comes in actually at about $30, although right now it's on sale. And the Field Notes one was something like $20, so maybe just a little bit less. But also the Field Notes one, it's much smaller, right? It's 60 pages. It is a little like pocket journal size thing, and stays open pretty well because it's all soft cover and whatever. I can just fold it and manipulate it all day long until it sits flat. So if you're looking for something like in terms of how much physical product you get for your dollar, right? The Field Notes is giving you the least, but maybe that's what you're looking for. Maybe you want something more compact that you can sort of toss in your bag and it's not going to take up a lot of space or whatever. The Beetle and Grimm one, like I said, it's smaller dimensions than the licensed one, the official ones, but is more pages, so they must be using a thinner stock paper. They also have a little pouch in the back to hold your goodies. The one I have was one of the first iterations when they were doing it. So it actually has a special cork cover. Right now, I don't think you can get the cork cover ones anymore. They have either an orange or a red cover you can get these days.
Right.
But the Field Notes one has no elastic band, has no bookmarks, whatever. The Beetle and Grimm has the sort of silk bookmarks in it, and it has, I think, 2 of them. Yes, it has 2 of them, which makes sense because you might want to mark a location where the players are currently at, and mark a page that has like the NPCs or whatever that you might want to mark. So. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's the construction. That's sort of what they appear like, and all of that. Now let's go through the actual sections of the journal. We were going to start with players. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Can I do one last thing on the construction? I don't think I've had this in a backpack yet. It's just from mailing. And some of the edges are a little dented. Not a big deal for me, but
Well, and I mean, I don't know. My aesthetic is such that I would expect that a journal that I'm lugging back and forth to game night or whatever is going to get a little beat up, and that's the aesthetic that I would be going for. But if you want it to continue looking nice and pristine or whatever, that's worth noting, right? It has the same style of cover that D&D books have, and those are also prone to denting because it's sort of a thicker cardboard cover, and if it gets banged, it'll dent.
Yeah.
And in terms of the interior aesthetics, like none of them really have interior artwork. Like the campaign journals, other than the cover plates. There is one page 3 of the player's journal, the official one, that has a little bit of sort of line art on it, where it's just sort of the introduction of how to use the book, sort of stuff. but I don't think any of
Right.
the others have any interior artwork outside of those cover plates.
Yeah. So and it's true on the artwork. They do try to make it look nice with colors and more like line decoration as separators or something. Like that's most of the decoration that you're going to get from it. The not going beyond just artwork type stuff though, like it feels like a key part of at least the first part of the player's journal, the player is around developing your character and potentially guiding you through figuring out how your character relates to particularly other party members.
Yeah. No, I actually really like there's multiple pages here. Page 5 through, oh geez, it keeps going. 5 through 23, is it? Yeah, 5 through 23 that are all about character creation. So you get 18 pages of just like questions about the concept as you're developing it, and what species is your character, and what do they think about people from other species? What's their class? How does that interact with their beliefs and their background and all that? And so you go through all of the normal steps of character creation, but it's really story focused. To the point that I kind of want to, I wish I could just get those 18 pages as little workbooks to hand out for all of my players to do when they, for a session 0 or whatever.
Yeah, well, like as an example, in the alignment section, they ask you a bunch of questions before it even talks about what alignment options there are to try to guide you, figure out more by how you're answering it for your character, what your alignment might be.
Yeah.
Which I thought was an interesting way to look at it. But I agree. And that goes to one of my, I hope it's okay to say it now rather than later. Part of my wondering about these two books, and particularly the character, the player one, is would it be better to not have one book that has no flexibility, right? There's some flexibility. I don't want to say there's none. There's graph paper in the back. There's section, but if you suddenly have, and there's blank pages as well. But if you run out of session logs because your campaign goes on for a long time and you have there's nothing you can do.
Yeah. No, I agree. And we can talk about that, I think, as we get to it. I think it's possible that some of the sections are longer than they need to be and other sections aren't as long as they need to be. And this is going to be a
right, or potentially
it's going to be a theme that I've noticed in all of them that I've looked at.
Yeah, and going to your point, and part of the reason I brought it up is your point about you wish you could have that section and just give it to your players at the beginning, and then you can figure out the rest of stuff. There's in notebooking, or I don't know, journaling, I think it's called traveler's notebooks, and they're actually much smaller ones that you're intended to fill out pretty quickly compared to keeping one big one around. But then they sell kind of like a binder or something that you can put them all in. And so you keep the ones in there that you need now, and then the other ones can come and go. And I was like, man, maybe if someone developed that system, that would be super cool.
Right. I mean, honestly, if they sold a 10-pack of just these first 18 pages for a session 0, and as a DM, I can hand them out to all my players and get through a couple of campaigns for just character development. That there's some great value in that too. Right. Yeah.
And then because not all of the players are going to want necessarily to do a full book like this, but the ones that can, they could buy the other sections if they want or not. I thought that, and field notes is one of the ones, because it's built, the field notes one you're showing is built more to be that segmented instead of all in one book.
Yeah.
You probably could do that a lot easier there.
Well, and to compare, the field notes book here doesn't do any of the character creation stuff. It starts with basically several pages that serve as your character sheet, which is actually where the next section of the official journal is.
Right.
It's basically a bunch of pages for your character sheet that isn't about character creation, although it is providing a lot of detail that you may not have normally put on a character sheet. Because it's not just here's a list of all your things, but there's like whole pages of where you're planning out your advancement, or you're listing how things change as you level up, and you're tracking all your spell slots here. You're keeping track of other members of the adventuring party, and there's a whole section on, was it here that there's a whole section on your proficiencies, or is that coming later? You can provide all kinds of detail, or maybe I'm mixing it up with another book. But there's several pages that are basically just your character sheet. The field notes one is the same way. The field notes one is very flexible generally, but it's like the first page is the basics of your character sheet, and then it just has big open dotted pages. I don't know if you can see all the bullet point dots on it.
Bullet journaling, basically.
Bullet journal style, and it's just like details about your species, details about your ancestry, details about your personal traits and your bonds, flaws, and ideals, and just big, open, flexible pages to fill out on those kinds of things.
Right. Yeah, and so I really like the prompts that are in the official one. Things like, so they have a whole page on attributes, and it says use words to describe strengths. What's kind of cool though about the field notes one is because it's not lines and it's just those dots, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Where you fill it in. You could make that, instead of words, you can make it a drawing. Like, it's more flexible depending on what people want to do, right?
Absolutely. Nope. The other thing that's worth noting, comparing it to the field notes journal, is the inside of the cover, instead of being beautiful decorative artwork, is actually tables and charts. It's got like the exhaustion rules in it, and it's got things for you to fill out, and stuff there. So actually, they're using that space to provide you some, a player version of sort of a DM screen. So you don't have to go and look things up. And the back cover is the same way, where it's just full of tables. And it has a little ruler on it. So if you need to like measure on the map, and the ruler is labeled out as 5, 10, 15, 20 for each inch. So it's actually like your movement speed style. So if just the last minute you need to figure out how far can I go with one movement or whatever, I can pull this out and it goes to 35 feet. So that's something a little different that they do in the field notes version. It's also very clear, though, that the field notes version and the official version of the player's journal are using different rule sets as their basis. Like the field notes one was designed during the 2014 5th edition rule set, not the 2024, and so it doesn't list species, it lists stuff about race, whereas and this will come up again later, the official one is clearly and fully updated to 2024, and it shows up in other spots too.
Right.
So when we talk about the character sheet section, both of them, I think, give you lots of stuff. And then, like, the official one gives you several pages to sort of track all the character sheet stuff, including the prepared spells, although there's not really a lot of note space to, like, jot down what the spell does or any of that kind of stuff. And then there's one page of sort of flexible, random notes stuff before you get into the next section. I feel like I actually liked the character sheet design on the official one more than the field notes one. It's more compact and it's more focused. Like in the licensed one, it's just a handful. It's just a couple of pages and it's focused on the character sheet. Whereas the field notes one starts with a couple of like a page of just basics, and then kind of the more role play sort of squishy stuff, and then more mechanics later. And then it's like, okay, great, but now I have to flip between multiple pages, and it takes up a bigger chunk of the book than I would prefer. I actually offered these to my players like 2 campaigns ago. Hey, anybody want to use this for the campaign or whatever, just to try it out and let me know how it goes and all that kind of stuff. And given that everybody's using D&D Beyond for their character, it was like, yeah, but like so much of this book is taken up by character sheet, and I don't want to use the character sheet. I have it digitally in front of me while we're playing. I
Right.
don't want to reference this book and then have to update it with pencil and paper and all that, when I can just have it digitally updated and it does all the math for me and everything. So I like that the official D&D one is like they give you the section for that, but it's compact to the point, and if you don't use it, like no biggie.
Right. Do you want to talk about the adventuring party section?
Yeah, so I also like that that it's the journals have a section to talk about the adventuring party where you as a player can sort of track who are the other people in the party and what's going on. I was trying to figure out where that is in the field notes one. The trick is there's an index, or it's not really an index, it's the front, it's a table of contents. But boy, is it teeny tiny. I just got new glasses today, so actually it's a little easier to read than it otherwise would have been. But I'm trying to figure out where the stuff is on the party. Because they go through character stuff between equipment, and then there's a whole page of just money, and there's a section on tracking your leisure and downtime activities. What are you doing when you're not out adventuring? Allies hire. That's where it is. It's under the allies, hirelings, and sidekick section of the Field Notes Journal. Is where there's a little spot to talk about. But boy, that's like 40 pages into the 60 some page book, right? It's so the vast majority of this thing is character sheet, whereas the licensed one. So if you're using D&D Beyond, like I don't know that journal really appeals. But you get a lot of pages that just about that's more prompts and journaling in the traditional sense. I feel like in the licensed one.
Yeah, I guess one thing for folks to know is it is a max of 9 party members. So because because it is all printed and planned out in advance.
Yeah.
Just know that is a limitation on it. But it does let you, figure out, like, write down what your character thinks of the person, or I guess what you think, but how you characterize the relationship in the notes and stuff like that. What is Bastion?
So that when I talked about how they have explicitly incorporated 2024 rules, you'll remember, or not because it's been since November of 2024. In the 2024 DMG, there's a whole section that they were very excited about. They talked about it a lot in the lead up about these Bastion rules, which is basically a system where characters can set up sort of a base of operations. The place where that's tricky is that like they have a Bastion section listed for each of the other characters in the party. And generally speaking, the Bastion system, I think, assumes that they all have the same Bastion. Like they're all using this, so it may have made sense to not have that in there, but instead have a couple of pages where you can describe the party's Bastion. If you're going to have it.
Yeah, I thought it was that, and then I got nervous that because it was on every single one, that how would it be different?
Yeah. I mean, I could see a scenario where somebody's coming in with a different Bastion because they've had a different background or whatever, and they haven't fully incorporated into the party yet or been around for very long. So I can see that. But otherwise, yeah, I would almost use Bastion, and instead of having them list like the Bastion that they all share, maybe use it instead for list your homeland. Where are you from in this world, in this setting?
Right.
And that could be useful. You talked about how it's limited because there's only 9 spots. But honestly, 9 is probably about right. Most parties run between 4 and 6, and you might have a couple of character deaths and have to bring in some new folks. 9 feels like it would cover like every campaign I've run.
Yeah.
Possibly ever. So.
Yeah, and it comes down to so things to think about is how often, for instance, there are those character deaths, right?
Right.
And then how like a campaign that goes 10 years might be different than one that usually is only going to go a few years. So I don't think this is for a 10-year campaign.
No, if you're running a 10-year campaign, there's other limitations to these journals that I think like all of them from every company.
Yeah.
You're going to be better off making your own thing.
No, totally.
So.
And then the other type of game I've been in before is where there's actually like, because we often can't schedule games on time, like, so there was 15 people, but any one night there would only be about 6 because of people's schedules. And it was a very episodic type thing. We had to end up back in town at the end of each night. So those would be hard too.
See, I've run a campaign like that before as well. But even then, I think we had a maximum of like 7 or 8. And then there's, an extra or 2 or in case somebody's character dies or whatever. Honestly, I was more concerned, thinking about all of the campaigns I've ever run, I'd be more concerned of wasted pages. But I think you're going to have to just be okay with not every page is going to get used all the time, and you never know what you might need. So it's better to have a couple of extra entries for other characters than not have it and need it later. But yeah, so and you mentioned sort of what's on these. It's basically 2 pages for every member of the party for you, and I suppose you can skip yourself, so that actually adds a little bit of more flexibility. But it's what's the name of the party member, what's the player's name, what species are they, class, their bastion, and then like a description, and that's all the first page, and then the second page starts getting into like, okay, but what do you think about them? Like there's prompts. What do you think about this person? How would you characterize your relationship with this person? And then just sort of a note section where it's a little bit more flexible and open-ended.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to be overly nitpicky. I think I would have preferred, instead of some of these darker lines, to do lighter lines or the dot approach for some of these areas to make it a little more flexible.
Sure. So you could draw or whatever instead of writing.
Yeah, sketch out something or something like, yeah. Yep. And because the start where it says party member, player, and stuff, those are all on are all on a line by themselves. That they take a lot of space there too. But the line's so dark that you can't easily overwrite it and stuff like that.
Yeah. The allies, hirelings, and sidekick section in the field notes one is literally just big, giant, open bullet journal pages. There's no prompts. There's no guidance. Which honestly is a little more too open for me. And it's only like only like 3 pages to list all of the allies and hirelings and sidekicks you might ever have in a campaign.
Yeah. But you could imagine, like in this book where it has that huge description section and the huge note section for each party member, being able to put in a table of their, like, if you happen to have a really cool, like a different quirky character that has like 5 brothers, being able to write the little table of them or something might be cool.
Make a little family tree or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. However you want to do it.
Nope. Not my current campaign, but my last campaign, we played Wild Beyond the Witchlight. One of my players played a goblin, and the sort of running joke was that the goblin, whose name was Gidget, had 37 brothers and sisters, and every now and then a new brother or sister would be named, and all of them have names that start with G. And so having that running list and the family tree of all the different G goblins in that list would have been a fun little diagram to put on there. But there's only 3 pages, so you're not going to put very much of that kind of stuff. Like that would take up at least a page, and then you got all the other party members to fill out stuff on.
Oh yeah.
So no, but I can see the value of, like, if you had the bullet journal style, and maybe just in the notes section, even that half a page for each entry that you could doodle on or draw pictures, or if you're an artistically inclined or whatever. I could see the interest in that.
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the next section then?
Sure.
So the next section is our non-player character section, where you basically have a page, 2 pages. A half page. There's a half page little entry for the name, description, what sort of faction or affiliation do they have, and notes for whatever various NPCs you might run into in a campaign that you want to remember. And I like how the section even starts with like its own fill in the blank table of contents, and so you can write down I need to figure out such and such NPC. Who was that person again? And you can find your notes on those NPCs.
Yeah.
Without having to go through like session notes and figure out, find that name or whatever.
Well, and this type of like doing a table of contents, that's common in bullet journaling too, which is I think probably also leading me to talk a lot about that type of journaling.
Sure.
But I do like being able to have it because you don't have to worry. You just add them as you learn about them, and you don't have to remember the exact page. You can use that table of contents for that section.
Yep, and so you got a bunch of pages for that. It goes page 51 to 63 with 2 entries per page. And then you get almost the exact same style of section. Then you get factions where you can sort of describe the different factions in a campaign that you run into. It's got does it have its own little table of contents? It does. And then after that, it's creatures. The campaign, it has a bunch of dragons in it or a bunch of undead in it. And you might want to keep a journal of the kinds of creatures you meet and try to remember, wait a minute, what was this creature? We learned something about trolls and how you want to use fire against them. I can put some notes in about the kind of creatures. There's not a lot of space for creatures. So you want to save it probably for the recurring or the big deal ones. Because you're not going to list every creature.
Spots.
Yeah, you're not going to list every creature you run into.
And so if we can just real quick about the faction. So an interesting thing to me about that is, and I guess you could do it for the non-player characters too, but factions to me seem like something that setting like helps. You might want to do even part of session 0 or something, talk about what factions they might want to be part of and be able to have those notes, and build it early in the campaign.
Yep. The Field Notes journal also has a faction section for you to keep track of. Again, it's like a handful of pages, and it's mostly just open bullet journal. Like there is a box at the top to list the names of the factions and their renown or whatever. But it's mostly just open bullet journal stuff. And then it gets into the session log section, which is it's a section that takes up a good amount of space, but boy, it doesn't leave a lot of space for a lot of sessions. It's page 84 through 122, but it's 2 pages per session.
And it expects I think 20 sessions if I just counted correctly. Okay,
that feels right. And it's got good things to list to keep track of there. Beyond just the session. When was the session? What number session is this? Whatever. It's got things where you can list sort of what your priorities and objectives in this session. What notes do you have for the party? Your personal notes. What encounters did you have? What locations did you go to? What unanswered questions or theories do you have? What new gear did you pick up, or what have you? What did you do during any downtime? Like all of that stuff is interesting stuff to track. That's more useful than just sort of a flowing narrative of somebody just jotting down in a notebook. But boy, it has been a really long time since I've ran a campaign that was 20 sessions or less.
Right.
My shortest campaigns these days probably run closer to 40 or 50. So this is not nearly enough pages of session logs.
Right. Because even if you did every other week, you wouldn't get a full year.
Right.
And that's where, really trying to understand what the expectation, like what type of campaign is this for, comes to mind. And what's also difficult, like you're talking about wasted areas, which totally should be okay with, but I don't know how many games would have like that much a section in every session about theories, maybe on unanswered questions, but like it really depends again on your game, that the particular campaign.
Yeah, no, I mean,
so
those sections generally feel okay to me because every session you're advancing the story, so there should be some questions, and you might have some theories about what's going on that you want to remember what those theories were. But you could also just have an open note section and jot those things down if they occur to you anyway. But I don't hate that there's a prompt for that. I just wish there was 3 times as many entries for that. There's a lot of things I would give up in order to have more of that.
Right.
The next section.
And I guess.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I guess for me, what I would like is like a page earlier that says some of the stuff you might want to jot down for a session, but give more flexibility to what the player finds important.
Sure, that could be a process or a solution to that too. Yeah.
And then they have the advancement log, which I think is where you're going.
Yes. The advancement. So the Field Notes journal also does an advancements log, but they do it with the character sheet, which honestly makes more sense to me, because that's where you're going to want to reference, what happened as you leveled up and whatever. Did you multi-class and all those kinds of stuff. It makes sense for those to be, but that's also part of why the character sheet section is just so long. The Field Notes one gives you an entire page for every level to track what happened in that level and what's new as you leveled up and all that kind of stuff. So that's a lot of pages.
Yeah, and then the thing that could be interesting, because it overall is in the session log section, but it's now disjointed from the story,
right?
Because it's at like you, and I don't know of a good way to fix that. So again, just talking about something, but it's not necessarily a huge criticism or anything. Just reading it pulls me out from that in that way. Like I've now taken my advantage for, my advancement outside of the story I'm trying to tell with my character through the sessions and everything.
And I'll tell you what, an advancement log where I could plan out my levels ahead of time even would have been super useful back in the 3rd edition days. But honestly, I would happily give up all of the advancement log pages to have more session notes sections.
Yeah. Well, because it goes all the way up from the start of the, to level 20. And that doesn't feel like I'm going to go all those levels in the campaigns? Sessions.
Oh, yeah. In the 20 sessions I have, that's a level per session. That doesn't seem likely.
Right.
And then the next section is
I'm sorry to laugh.
No, I mean, the next section is about bastions, which was the biggest, most glaring, obvious reason I thought, they've definitely targeted this to the 2024 rules. And it's not huge. It's got a couple of pages, and it helps guide you through the process of setting up the bastions and what have you. It's fine. Not every campaign's going to have a bastion, so your mileage may vary. But it's there, and it's only a couple of pages. What is it? 4 pages to track your bastions, and it has the specific sort of special facility like features that appear in as I recall, in the rules from the DMG in setting up bastions and how to do that. And then a section where you can keep track of your bastion orders, which is again part of those mechanics. And then the entire rest of the book, and maybe this fixes the issue of not enough session log pages. The entire rest of the book is, which is page 134 all the way to 190, whatever, is just blank pages and grid pages. And so if I'm using it as a player, I just save all of those and turn each one of those additional pages into session logs that I'm sort of freehanding.
Yeah, I guess the one thing, instead of fully blank, I again wish it had a light dot. Right.
That makes sense. Or the grid was lighter. The grid pages are really heavy grid. So I could use my pen and make lines around it or whatever, but it's going to cover a lot.
Yeah. And then it doesn't take us fully to the end of the book. There are reference tables at the end.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Good call. I already closed the book. Sort of like how the field notes has some reference tables and things, some rules, breakdowns, and all that in the on the front and back cover, inside the front and back cover. This book gives you some of that as well. So a little bit of your DM screen, but for players sort of section. It's the kind of things you can do with different actions, the kind of things that are associated with different skills or abilities or stats or whatever. Um, Although I do find that listing of tables is super, like it feels like it was written for a new player who's picking up the game for the first time. Because an
Right.
experienced player doesn't need a single one. Like I know what acid damage is, things. I know what strength is. I don't need that spelled out. So those reference tables are really only useful for really new players that don't know the game.
Right. And I think that's reinforced by the picture of what the different dice look like
Right.
as well.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. Whereas the field notes one, like it's different stuff. It's the exhaustion table. So, oh, I've got 2 levels of exhaustion. What does that mean again? I don't have to be reminded all the time. It does have the breakdown of combat. It's got the ruler. It's got your alignment table, which is also pretty basic stuff. But there's some additional sort of things in there that aren't so basic. Although, does the official one also have your weapon mastery abilities? Because that is something that would actually be useful. I'm looking now.
I remember.
Maybe it doesn't. That would have been useful. Nope, it doesn't. They missed an opportunity there. So the reference tables could be a lot better, and a lot more useful. I think. I don't think many players are going to spend much time looking at them after they've gotten their
Yeah.
first 2 or 3 sessions in. All of that will be second nature. So. Okay, so we've spent, 45 minutes talking about the player's book. Should we talk about the DM's book?
Sure.
So, I guess maybe we'll try to be a little bit more, use a little more brevity. Uh,
Yeah.
so, it's set up in the same way. It's got the same sort of thing, stuff on it. I do. So it opens with your player profiles. So your first job as the DM is to sort of track the players, and by the players, they mean
Yeah.
the characters.
Yes.
I mean, you list the player's name, but you're not. Other than that, you're not listing any other information about the players. But you're describing the characters. What are your story hooks? What's their personality? What do they look like? What motivates them? What key items do they have? You don't have to list all of their items, but what are some of the items they might have that would play into the story? So I like the idea of having this as a DM, and having and that being an easy way to sort of remember and go back and review the different players when I'm trying to think of ways to incorporate players' backstory or their story, their focus or whatever into the campaign.
Right.
To compare it, the Field Notes Journal. The Field Notes Journal, interestingly, actually has a player profile section on the first page. It's a spot where you can list. You list the character, but you list the player's name, and then you list their email address or contact information. So it's your little like address book
Right.
for your group of players. But mostly it jumps straight into campaign stuff that is the second section of the official one. And it's mostly just big open bullet journal pages again. What's the overview of the world and what's the multiverse like in this setting and that kind of stuff.
Right.
What's the Pantheon calendar? It's a lot of there's little hex pages so you can draw world maps and things.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it just opens straight up, not with information about the characters and the players, but information about your setting. The the Beetle and Grimm one does similar to the official one. It opens with pages and pages, well, a bunch of pages about the player characters. Um, it is though more open. It's not lined. You see how it's just got boxes and it's sort of wide open for you to do what you want in there. So you might like something
Right.
like that. I also
Yeah.
I didn't mention this in the construction section. It's actually color coded and tabbed. Each section has its
Oh,
own
wow.
little finger hole tab, so you can easily turn to that section. And if you look very closely, like the different sections, edge coloring is just a little bit different. So
Oh, nice.
these are all brown, and then later on you're into the yellow section, and then there's a green. So you can kind of eyeball it as, oh, the player stuff, that's the brown. Let me, I can see where that is and find it pretty quickly. So yeah, so that's what we have at the beginning of those journals. The official one then goes straight into your campaign stuff, the stuff that the field notes journal starts with, which is like big picture campaign ideas, is where the official one goes next. And then it digs in, like it starts off with just a couple of pages of big picture, and then it gets into more details where you're going to list individual places, and there's a bunch of room for, what are the interesting spaces or people or whatever in these places. I do like there's some
Right.
of these that like I'm like I don't know why I need an access section on every single place, but it is nice that they have a page at the beginning to sort of describe for you what they mean by that.
Right.
And that's where they're talking about how do people get into this place? Do they have natural defenses? There are walls, or is it underground? Or so it's a way for you to describe what it looks like when the players first go to the place. So in that way, I guess it's helpful.
Right.
Like I said, the bullet or the field notes one is more bullet journals or a couple of open tables. I think there's instead of places, which are broad and vague in the official one, it gives you a section with tables on it for major kingdoms, settlements and locations, and you can actually squeeze several onto. There's two on each page, even though they're tiny little pages. So you gotta have good eyes to use the field notes one. And then let's remind myself what the Beetle and Grimm one looks like. It starts off with timeline and the world history. It's really just walking you through the process of creating it. It has big open bullet journal style pages. I don't know if you see that. Where it's like it's just described as world visuals. Whether it's you want to draw maps or you want to draw iconic characters or items or whatever. There's several pages of that before it gets into key locations, which is the places version of the official one, which has all the tables, but then also ends with your bullet journal section. So instead of just an open notes, you also have a bullet journal section where you can. It says for maps and sketches, and so you can describe all of those too. And there's a good number. Like you might have more places in your campaign than you have space to fit in any of these three journals. But it gives you a spot for the big ones that are going to be maybe recurring or that the players are going to want to remember. I mean, most of the campaigns I've run, this has enough places, sections to like cover the big things,
Right.
So I think it would get along okay with that. It is limited a bit in those things, but I don't think it's going to be that much of a limit.
Right.
Okay, and so then our next section in the official journal is the journeys section. That one's interesting to me. Like I did not anticipate that would be a thing that I would want to track. But it's a page for each journey. Where did you start? How long did it take? What was your transportation? What were the conditions, the challenges, the landmarks, the people? And it's just sort of a way of tracking the travel moments in the campaign of when the characters go from one place to another, and what they run into along the way.
Right. And I guess one of the questions I have with that, because it's interesting, because you did it kind of as a the way you just described it was journaling to record something that had happened.
Yeah.
When they talk about it in here, it's about a planning exercise of how will it be for the party.
Yeah. So I guess it's a way to describe the stretches in between the places. You've got all these places. What's it like when you go from this place to this other place? And I guess as a planning thing, that works better than as a journal, I guess. I don't know that, like, given the number of places, you can't describe the journey from between all of them, but you can sort of hit the major ones, you know?
Yeah. And it's something like if you got a published adventure that often a lot of them do require, like they're in one place and then they go to another, like it helps you think through that in advance because you know that it's a published adventure that's gonna happen. Likely it's a little more railroady.
Tends to be. I mean, some of them, whether they're railroady or not, there's very likely to be travel, from place to place. But that also depends on the campaign, right? Some campaigns there's going to be less of that.
Yep.
So, and I find that to be an interesting section. I don't hate the idea of sketching out some of those major travel points. Like in my current campaign, I'm running Phandelver and below. There's not a ton of travel. You're mostly in this relatively small region. But they do occasionally go back to Neverwinter from the small town where they're based out of. And so that's a journey that would be interesting to describe. I could describe it from Phandalin out to the mountains, or the hills or whatever. There's a couple of journeys there that would be interesting to describe.
And with the things you're just describing as well, the idea of making this a living document. So when next time they go to Neverwinter, potentially if there's any impact on what they've done, that would be good to call out here as you're planning it and say like, hey, this thing has now happened. This is how they can see it through their journeys.
Yep. And none of the other journals I'm looking at have anything like that. There is no journey section. This is a unique thing that they did in this official one that I think is interesting. I'm eager to play around with it and see how that goes.
Yeah.
So the next section in all of the journals is the non-player characters. It is a place for the DM to list who are the non-player characters. Now, in the official one, it's everything, including their basic stats. What is their strength, dex, con, etc.? How many hit points do they have? What's their speed? What's their alignment? But then it's also notes on what is their role? What is their personality? What is their appearance? Very importantly, what is their voice? I like the voice one because I oftentimes create voices for NPCs and then they don't show up for several sessions. And then I forget what voice I was doing. Somebody once upon a time, this is an aside, but somebody once upon a time, probably back in the 4th edition days, and now that I'm saying it, I think it might have been Mike Shea who said, the best way to do NPC voices is just do an impression of a celebrity. For the vast majority of us playing D&D, we're not good at impressions, so it's not actually going to sound like Sean Connery. But if you put down, this is your Sean Connery impression, then you'll do it poorly in the same way every time. So then that character is consistent.
Right.
So I like the non-player character sections. The like I said, the official one has places for actual stats. There's a lot of pages. Do you see how many pages there are? There's room for at least like 20 or 25 NPCs in there, I think.
I think so, yeah.
The Beetle and Grimm one breaks it down into different types. So there's key NPCs or creatures. There's recurring NPCs. There's minor NPCs or creatures, and then there's just a section for notes. It doesn't have the mechanical bits, but you'll also note that the other journals I'm referencing are Game Master journals, so they're not specifically exclusively for D&D, which changes some of the things. Although there is a section in the Beetle and Grimm one for you to jot down notable stats and abilities that are relevant. there's a spot for notes, but similar to the other ones before, it's boxes, but there's no lines. There's no lines, there's no bullets, it's just boxes, and you can sort of put what you want in each of those
Right.
in each of those sections. The only thing to fill out is there's a checklist of you know, what kind of NPC is this? Is it a patron, an ally? Is their experience with you positive, indifferent, negative? Are they an enemy? And then there's another little section of checkboxes. They may help. They may kill you. They may rob you. They may destroy you. They may love you. And so little things that you can sort of try to remember what the relationships and roles were for these NPCs. So
Yeah.
and then let me compare that then to the field notes version. The field notes
And then
version,
just real quick,
oh yeah.
it's 25 non-player characters.
Okay.
That's the number you can get in the official. Sorry.
Perfect. The field notes one is a lot less room for notes. It's very specific lined sections, but they're very small sections, but they're fitting 2 NPCs per page.
Right.
Because they're so much more limited in size, because it's only 60 pages. They give you a good amount of space for, and I guess I said that they're not D&D focused. The field notes one is D&D focused, even though it's listed as a Game Master's Journal, but it's the 5e Game Master's Journal. And so there is a spot to list AC and hit points, but there's not any stats there. There's just tiny little spots where you could write a few keywords under some of the other features of these NPCs.
Yeah. One thing that I think is missing from the non-player character area is the ability to say for each player character how the non-player character feels about them.
Mm-hmm.
Because or something like that to because you might want to keep that. They might see a character and it goes weeks, and then you're like, oh wait, he's still mad at that one guy.
Right. And that's something that the Beetle and Grimm one explicitly sort of calls out, even if it's in checklists, to remind you to think about that. Whereas the official, you might have to squeeze it in somewhere, in one of those other sections.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the next section in the field notes journal is where you start listing stuff about the player characters. It's weird to me. Again, the organization is weird to me that it's in the middle. I get that they put it with like other characters. Okay.
Right.
But those are the characters you're going to reference every session. So I kind of want them right up front where I can find them.
Well, your setting is the most important. So
I mean, for some DMs, that's true.
Yeah.
So then the next section, and I'm trying not to be too rushed, but also I want to make sure we can talk about everything. The next section in the official one is the factions. So you're still kind of building some character, some setting stuff, because you're building out the factions and what are the major organizations and what have you. And it is a 2-page per faction. And there's a good number of pages for factions. Honestly, most of my campaigns are not going to have that many factions, and I need all of these pages for it. But it's what's the name of the faction? What do they do? What's their symbol? It's weird that the symbol is lines. That of all places to have open boxes to be able to draw things, that would be the ideal place to have it. Leaders, members, headquarters, and then just other notes. It is weird that there's a section for symbol, but it's not just an open box like up in the corner. That's okay. Choices were made there. The field notes section journal also has a section for factions next, and Beetle and Grimm has no section for factions at all. So you'd have to find other places to squeeze it in. Like the field notes, you will be shocked to hear, is much more compact. With their factions, there is one page for major factions, and you can fit in information for 2 factions, and then there's several pages for No, I'm sorry. Then there's one page for minor factions, and you can squeeze 4 minor factions. So you can have a total of 6 factions if you're using the field notes Game Master's Journal. Whereas the official one has lots of pages for it.
But only 7 factions.
Oh, is it still only 7 factions? So
Yeah.
I guess it's about the same number of factions. You don't get to distinguish between major and minor, so they all get major description. Interesting. And then creatures. And again, it's similarly broken down. You've got some stats to list there, just basic stuff, as well as a description, abilities, spells and attacks, and then just some notes. I guess for those creatures that are going to recur, honestly, I'm not entirely sure. With the things that are here to fill out for the creatures, I don't know what role that serves. As a DM, what am I using that creature section for in the official?
Yeah, and they kind of point to the idea that if you're creating a new creature that doesn't exist elsewhere or modifying a creature, that you might want to go through these prompts.
Uh-huh.
But none of these, I guess, none of these prompts help you create that story, really?
Nope.
And it doesn't guide, if we take from the point of view that this is really meant towards newer players and newer DMs, like, it doesn't overly guide you through the story for the creature.
Mm-hmm.
Which, referencing back to our Monster Manual conversations, is even more important because a lot of the lore has been removed, right?
Right. Yeah, there's not a lot. Yeah, you don't have. What I would want for my creature section is a brief reminder of abilities and then sections to talk about how they fit into the story and their interactions with the players. And this, the official campaign journal doesn't provide me with that. The field notes journal honestly provides me probably with even less, because they're squeezing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 creatures on each page, and there's only 2 pages. So there's literally just one line that says description where I can maybe squeeze in some notes.
Right.
And the Beetle and Grim one actually incorporates the creatures into the NPC section, which probably does the best job of it, other than I'm mixing in NPCs with creatures, because it treats it almost entirely as story prompts that I want to remember, or narrative prompts I want to remember, but it's mixed in with the NPCs,
right?
Which I suppose creatures are NPCs, so that can work. But I might be looking in different places as a DM. Yeah.
And then I think a key thing for both this and the NPCs area, for instance, there's nowhere clear to reference what book, like if it came from a book, what book and page.
Yep. The field notes one actually does do that. That one does have well, interestingly, it gives you a page number. It doesn't have a space to write down what book it came from.
Right.
But there's a page number, I guess you assume it's the Monster Manual.
Right.
So then the next section is our magic items section, where you're going to describe very briefly the various magic items that your party might run into. And there's, like I was going to say, I might only care about tracking this for major magic items, but if I'm being honest, there's enough pages of this, and you can get 4 magic items per page. You could probably track every magic item in the game that you run into in a campaign. The only thing I wish it had that it doesn't have is I wish there was a spot to write down where that item is, like who's carrying it, or is it in the party loot in the bag of holding or whatever. I wish there was a spot to sort of track its location. And there's some open space because each one ends with attunement as the last line, and it's just attunement with a checkbox if it requires attunement. So there's just some open space down there I could jot down its location. But it's weird that they have details on so many other things, and they don't have that detail.
Yeah, and from the instruction page, it sounds like they're guiding you through creating new magic items.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how much this really actually does that.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
There is guidance for doing that, and I guess maybe in the same way that the player's guide had all of this stuff that you need to track for bastions using the DMG. I suppose if I'm using the DMG to create a magic item, this has most of the stuff I need to jot down and remember things about the magic item. So I guess it could be useful in that way as sort of a worksheet to follow along the creation process. It honestly needs probably bigger section for description then to describe what it does.
Right.
But that aside, I suppose I could see it as a worksheet for magic item creation, in which case there's probably way more entries than you need, because most games I've ever been in or run aren't going to create that many magic items in a campaign. They're mostly going to use the magic items that exist.
Right.
So then we get into our session logs. I should say that the field journal also has a magic item section. It's more focused on, I guess it's more focused on squeezing a whole bunch into one page, basically. There's very little there. It's just name, description, owner. It has that owner thing. That's helpful, and page number as a reference. It's not for creating. Interestingly, it also has 4 entries for artifacts. Boy, if your campaign has 4 different artifacts, that's a wild campaign.
Right.
I find it so I don't remind me. Are there downtime sections in the official one? I don't think there are. The rest of the rest of the official journal is your session logs and the blank pages for just spare notes and stuff at the end.
Then the house rules is the last one.
Oh yeah,
sorry.
Both, I think it's both Beetle and Grimm. No, it's maybe just the field notes. The field notes seem to really focus a lot on downtime stuff. So field notes has both the player and the GM one has a downtime section in it to just track sort of what you're doing during the downtime and what activities are going on. Then we get into the session logs. Boy, the field notes one is teeny tiny. It is 3 sessions per page, and it's about 10 pages. And then it finishes off with a page for just random pages, bullet journal style, to create random encounter tables, but not enough to get through a campaign. So that's a thing. The session log section in the official one, I like that it opens with these little, here's some potential hooks, here's some potential stakes for an adventure to help give you a little bit of guidance for creating a session. The things that you are referencing. So there's 2 pages per session where you're listing, what's the session number, the title of the session, how does it open. There's an index section, different sort of story threads, what are the objectives, the hooks, the stakes, the notes section, and then the closing. Interestingly, there's an initiative section, as if you're only going to have 1 combat per session, and that's, I guess you could have different lines or whatever of initiatives and track them different ways. I feel like that was them trying to do something clever and interesting, and I just don't know practically how that's going to be useful at my table, right? I think the initiative section is just going to be an open box where I can doodle or draw notes or whatever.
Or use pencil and then erase after every encounter.
That's definitely not going to happen.
It is also interesting that the index section, it's only 3 lines. It's intended for you to write down new things introduced and then what page you have in this journal, the more information on that.
Yeah.
So I do think it's like, on one hand, I want to be like, a lot of sessions you'll have more than 3. On the other hand, if you do this, it helps you think, or at least suggests to you that maybe you want to space out some of the introductions to things. So I could go either way on that one. For me, this doesn't match how I tend to think of sessions.
Right.
Particularly like trying to come up with the stakes area. Like I think I get including that in counter design and stuff like that, but that's different to me than a session log.
No, yes. Honestly, I look at it and I think, mostly this would be super useful for planning. And a lot of the book is set up that way, but a log isn't where you plan things. It's it's where you record the things that happened. But I could see this being super, like, my sessions would be better if I thought through, how am I going to open this session? What are the stakes? What are the objectives? And if I think through all of those things for each session, it's going to be better. The trick is going to be, I never quite know where my sessions are going to close, because I'm really bad at judging how long my players are going to take on certain things. Sometimes they're going to fly through some stuff that I didn't think they'd fly through, and sometimes they're going to spend 20 minutes figuring out how to open a door.
Right. And I think part of it too for me is, there's the log of stuff that happens and maybe even some of the planning, but then the idea of what are the 3 things that I want to make sure I know it has a thread section, but the 3 things I want to make sure come up again, either in the next session or maybe even a little later, that maybe will have, that I think will have heavier weight or more interest from the players and their characters.
See, now I like the session log section in Beetle and Grimm's a good amount. Like it opens up with a previously on section where you get to summarize sort of major events that are relevant to this session that have happened in previous sessions. Then there's the rest of that page it's all just open boxes again. The second big section is where you can sort of outline and bullet point your plan for the session.
Right.
Locations that they're likely to, and then section is where you're actually logging what happened. What locations did they go to? What NPCs or creatures did they encounter? What did they accomplish, or what mistakes did they make? And then sort of a place at the bottom to track sort of player information and XP and all that kind of stuff. That feels useful to me. Now, there's only room in here for 20 to 25 sessions in your campaign again.
Right.
So there's issues with that. But the Beetle and Grimm one also does all kinds of other things. Like this is also the section where you can list significant magic items. It's all in the sort of, what do they call this section? This is the game section, whereas the previous section was campaign plan. So first you plan, then you actually create the game, what have you. In fact, in their campaign plan section, they actually have a section where you plan out each individual encounter. And you've got a bullet journal section for drawing maps for each encounter or whatever. Again, there's no way there's enough pages of that to cover every encounter in an entire campaign, even if the campaign was only 25 sessions. There's not enough. If you're doing 2 or 3 encounters per session, there's no way you've got enough space. But you can at least sketch out major encounters that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then it finishes with a campaign recap section where you get to sort of recap the most memorable moments of each campaign. So it's functioning as a little bit of a journal or a diary, where you get to sort of write down the best quotes of the campaign or the best wins. How was the world changed as a result of the campaign? So it's sort of something you might do as an epilogue, fill out with your players after the campaign is over.
Right.
That said, the place where the Beetle and Grimm one really, the officially licensed one has like a third of each book is just blank pages or graph pages for notes. Whereas the Beetle and Grimm one has like a couple of pages of blank for notes at the end of each section. And I can see where that's valuable, but it's in total, it's way less pages, just open-ended pages for notes.
Right.
All right. So other than session logs and our blank pages, is there another hidden thing at the end? Oh, yep. There's a couple of pages for you to track house rules. You can squeeze 3 house rules on a page. There's 2 pages, so you can have 6 house rules in your campaign. More than that, not allowed.
Well, you just use the blank pages.
No, not allowed. I like what I find interesting or fun. The Beetle and Grimm one is not specifically designed for D&D.
Right.
Like it's totally D&D useful, but their end is actually a little appendix. And so they have a page of safety tools that you can use for gaming, like lines and veils or X cards. There's a plot hook generator, just a random table where you can, with 3 columns, to do what do they need to do, who are they with, and where are they going, and you can sort of roll a d20 3 times, determine those things randomly, and throw together a plot hook. There's NPC generators, there's shop generators, and then there's just 2 blank pages of generators, and you can make your own generator tables. So I think that's interesting and a fun little way to use those last few pages in the journal as well.
Right.
Okay. That's all of the journal, the two journals plus 3 more. So we've kind of given an overview of 5 different campaign journals, 2 player journals, 3 Dungeon Master or Game Master journals. So tell me, as we wrap up here, is this something that you would use in your games?
I don't know.
Okay.
Like I think I would prefer just buying a bullet journal type journal.
Okay.
The thing I'd most likely use is some of their organization, right? And going through and thinking through those things.
There's some good prompts.
Maybe
I really appreciate a lot of the prompts.
Yeah.
They give me something to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. But it feels a little constraining to me. Like having the number of pages, unless I know it's not going to go over 20, like, then what do I do?
Yeah.
I guess what I could do is start here and then do the bullet journal afterwards type thing. That could work okay.
Yep. Yeah, I'm intrigued. Honestly, I've been collecting these things for a few years now, like I said, and I haven't used any of them. And I think the main reason why is that I keep running published adventures, and I just don't feel the need for a published adventure. Like I keep an outline to track what's coming up next and what my players have done each session or whatever. And that sort of does the job. And if I need to find an NPC, like I'm running a published adventure, I have it on D&D Beyond, I can just search the name of the NPC and pull them up and find them. You know, it doesn't take me that long.
Right.
That said, I have 3 different campaigns in my head that are completely homebrewed. Or very sandboxing using a published setting or whatever. And suddenly for those, I could see value in like world building and campaign structure building using some of these journals. And I'm tempted to break them out and try it. And I'll be curious to see how it goes. I like the official one a lot. There's some sections of the Beetle and Grimm one I like more, but there's some sections that I like the official one more. The Field Notes one has the advantage of being small and compact and relatively inexpensive. I think it may have come in 2 packs because I have 2 of each one. I don't think I bought specifically at $20. I don't think I bought 2 of each one. I should double check that though before I. Yeah, it's a 2-pack. So it's $20, but so it's almost the same price, but you get two of them. And so that, in terms of value for your money, that actually comes out okay. There's just not a ton of space in there as a GM. As a player, right, maybe, but then the player one runs into the issue that the player field notes one, like half of the thing is a character sheet, and I don't want to do that. I want to use D&D Beyond. Whereas the player one for the from the official is interesting in that all those prompts, like there's a lot of prompts to build your character and track who the other characters are and what do you think about them. And I think there's some interesting exercises to do that can make the role playing a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that's missing for at least me is examples of how someone has used this creatively. Mm-hmm. I could see it. I can mostly see it, but seeing how other folks do that, and because one of the things it does provide, I said the structure is a little too confining before, but one of the nice thing that structure provides is the ability to then have a shared vocabulary and be able to do describe exercises you could do using the journal.
Yeah. No, I'm very keen on stealing a bunch of the prompts and ideas for my players for Section 0 for upcoming campaigns and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of appeal in that. I don't mind the structure. The structure does me a lot of good sometimes. But there's not there. But you're not wrong that there's some spots where I wish there was less structure. And the fact that the symbol section is lines to write out in words, like that boggles my mind. I don't know how they didn't think of just putting a blank box there to let people draw.
Right. And then, I think the structure, again, just the idea of, you learn a bunch about the player characters, but how do you surface up things that are going to be key, that are likely to be keys to really bringing the player into the story and or making the choices they made when they created their character, not like payoff is the word that comes to mind, but not in a a bad way, but just give them those opportunities, right, to show the intention that they put into their character. Well, if that's something that makes sense for your table.
I don't know that there's an expectation that you necessarily fill out everything when you create the character. Like you could leave a lot of those prompts blank and fill them out as you go. And that would that would make a lot of sense. I'm curious what they say I didn't actually read the one page how to use this book section, but
right. I think the thing that I'm getting more towards is there are certain types of notebooks you can buy where 2/3 of the page are your notes from something from a meeting or something you attend, and then they leave space to then tie concepts together or say, hey, this is the really important thing I want to take, that I think I need to take away from this. And the structure of the pages in the campaign journals don't overly allow for that.
Yeah. No, and I just skimmed that intro how to use it section, and let's talk about if it's most helpful to leave sections blank. If you want to draw all over it or whatever, or make maps or doodle or whatever, do that. It's okay, great, but you could have given space for that,
Right, or made it later so that way it's more easier to draw. It's easier to draw over it. Yeah.
No, I agree. Well, I think that is our thoughts on these various campaign journals. So, honestly, I would have expected when I got the licensed campaign journals and I saw the construction and how thick they were and how much work went into them, I was honestly surprised that they were $25. That's a pretty cheap price for what it is. Yeah. So I'm not disinclined to picking up some of these and using them in campaigns every now and then because it's not super expensive. I'm going to get multiple years worth out of my $25 of use. So that's not too bad. So, but anyway, I think that's the end of this episode. I want to thank all of our patrons who support us at patreon.com/The Tome Show. I was recently looking at our Patreon history. We've had our Patreon it's been almost 10 years now. And I discovered that for whatever reason, 2018 was our biggest year. It was this strange spike in terms of Patreon support. And we estimated a little bit more than $100 a year, more than what I anticipate we'll see for this year. But if you wanted to try to beat that record, I would not discourage that. Feel free to join in for as little as $1 a month. It helps me pay the bills. It also helps me cover the cost of buying other products like all these campaign journals. So any support that you can and are willing to chip in is greatly appreciated.
And if you'd like to contact us, you can send email to tomeshow@gmail.com. You can find us on social media. Jeff is typically as Squatch, SQUACH, and I'm as Sarah Darkmagic, Sarah with an H.
And we're going to call that episode 396, where we finally got our campaign ideas organized as we looked at campaign journals in this episode of The Tome.
I'm on the wall.